Now, if you've been following along on my videos, up to this point you would think that the only type of network cabling out there is good old unshielded twisted pair. Well, my friends, that's not true, and that's what this episode's all about. In particular, I want to talk about two other types of cabling technologies, fiber optic and coaxial. While not nearly as well used or as commonly used as unshielded twisted pair, these two types of technologies have a lot of important uses in the networking world, and that's why the A+ wants me to cover it. So let's dive right in, and let's start off with fiber optic. Fiber optic is the cable you turn to where regular twisted pair might not be what you need. Fiber optic uses light instead of electricity, and it has some real big benefits over twisted pair. For example, fiber optic cable can be very long. Depending on the standard, 40 kilometers is not uncommon. The other nice thing about fiber optic is that it's completely impervious to electromagnetic interference. So magnets and motors and things like that won't affect fiber optic cabling at all. Now, if you're going to be working with fiber optic, there's a few things you need to know, and well, that's what I'm here for. So the first thing is there are two types of light that are transmitted with fiber optic. There's laser light, and then there's regular light, used light emitting diodes. And you have a different type of fiber optic for each one. Right here is what we call single mode fiber optic cable. This type of cable is designed specifically for transmitting lasers. This is the more common and cheaper and slower multimode. Multimode is designed to transmit regular light, which is really just LEDs. So you have these two types of cables. Now, the cables themselves are great, but there's a couple of issues you need to be aware of. First of all, whenever you're working with fiber optic cables, you're not just plugging one cable into a network card or into a switch. They always come in pairs. So if you had a fiber optic network card, I don't have one on me, can we put a picture up? Okay. You'll notice that it has two connectors, one for sending and one for receiving. So remember, when you're working with fiber optic, it's always two cables. In fact, it's so common that a lot of times we'll do stuff like this. If you take a look over here, if you look at this cable, you'll see that the cable is actually two cables that are fused together. And that's pretty common. We call that a duplex cable. Okay, now that's the cables. Now let's talk about connectors. There are hundreds of different types of fiber optic connectors. I mean, hundreds. Luckily for you, the A+ only covers 3 of them, and I'm going to hit those all right now. The first one I want to talk about is the ST connector. This is a round connector, and ST, I don't know what it stands for, but to me it means stick it in and then twist it. So you actually insert it by give it a little stick and then give it in a twist. STs are one of the oldest connectors around. The other one I want to talk about is SC. So here's an SC connector. We stick it in and click it. So SC is a square connector. Let me see if I can put this ST back in frame. And the ST is a round connector. I promise you, you're going to be seeing questions on the A+, showing pictures of those, and you need to know ST from SC. ST and SC were around for ages, I mean decades, and they're still around. You can still buy network cards and all kinds of stuff that use ST or SC. But because we're always running duplex cable, the connectors were physically large. So we're always looking for ways to make the connections smaller. And luckily for us, we only have one on the A+, and it's known as the LC connector. So notice that the LC connector, first of all, that's two connectors there. Do you see that? So it's also a lot smaller, and it takes up a lot less space. So that's LC. Again, there's a lot more connectors than that, and if you really want to get into connectors on fiber optic, well, take my Network Plus class. We go into them in incredibly intricate detail. Okay, now that's fiber optic. The next thing I want to do now is talk about something old and cool and still used and loved, and that is coaxial. Coaxial cable has been around since, well, it's been around for a very, very long time. And it's just one of those technologies that everybody thinks is going to become obsolete, and they start doing stuff with it, and it just keeps getting faster, better, stronger. So coax is still very much around. Now, before we talk about the types of coax you're going to see on the A+, I have a open little piece of coax here, and I want you to look at this quite closely. The reason it's called coax is because you have more than one connection that shares an axis. So if you take a look here on the inside, we've got a little conductor right here, and then this piece right here is an insulator which separates it from another conductor. So coaxial means you're going to have at least two conductors, but you can have more than that, but normally it's going to be two. So that's the concept of what coaxial is. Now, the A+ luckily does not go into great detail on coaxial, but really concentrates on the type of coaxial you're going to be seeing in the real world. When we talk about coaxial, it all starts with some type of RG value. I think it stands for radio grade. Is that right? Perfect. Okay. So different RGs talk about different types of coax. There's only two on the A+. There's RG6 and RG59. When we talk about these types of coaxial cable, we talk about their impedance, which is measured in a value called ohms. And luckily for you, both of these are set at 75 ohms. Make sure you know both of those are 75 ohm impedance. Now, that handles the actual cables themselves, but I do want to talk about connectors a little bit. So I've got a couple of connectors to show you here. Let's start off with a classic. This is called BNC connector. Don't even get me into an argument as to what BNC stands for. It's an old argument. The bottom line, make sure you recognize what a BNC connector looks like. So that is BNC. BNC is still used. We see it used on video a lot, and some old, very old types of network connections. What's more probable type of connector you're going to see for coaxial these days is this guy. So this is an F connector. Notice that it's got a threaded connection, and probably the place you're going to see that more often than not, pretty much any place, is going to be on cable connections and that type of stuff. All right, so those are the important connections and types that you need to know for coaxial. Make sure that you are comfortable with fiber optic, the different types of fiber optic. Make sure you know your fiber optic connectors, and also make sure you know your different types of RGs for coaxial, and make sure you know a BNC from an F connector.